I'm Jeremy. Today is 413 of reading, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Let's get started. Currently on page 355. Oh my god. Really suspicious. Sit down, she mouthed to Ernie and Hannah, gesturing frantically to them to rejoin the Hufflepuff table. Later, we'll talk to you later. I'll tell Michael, said Ginny impatiently, swinging herself off her bench. The fool, honestly. She hurried off toward the Ravenclaw table. Harry watched her go. Cho was sitting not far away, talking to the curly-haired friend she had brought along to the Hog's Head. Would Umbridge's notice scare her off meeting them again? But the full repercussions of the sign were not felt until they were leaving the Great Hall for a minute history of magic. Harry, run! It was Angelina, and she was hurrying toward them, looking perfectly desperate. It's okay, said Harry quietly, when she was near enough to hear him. We're still going to. You realize she's going to include Quidditch in this? Angelina said over him. We have to go and ask permission to reform the Gryffindor team. What? Said Harry. No way, said Ron, appalled. You read the sign. It mentions teams too. So listen, Harry, I'm saying this for the last time. Please, please do not lose your temper with Umbridge again, or she might not let us play anymore. Okay, said Harry, for Angelina looked as though she were on the verge of tears. Don't worry, I'll behave myself. Bet Umbridge is in history of magic, said Ron grimly, as they set off for Bin's lesson. She hasn't inspected Bin's yet. Bet you anything she's there. But he was wrong. The only teacher present when they entered was Professor Binns, floating an inch or so above his chair as usual and preparing to continue his monotonous drone on giant wars. Harry did not even attempt to follow what he was saying today. He doodled idly on his parchment, ignoring Hermione's frequent glares and nudges, until a particularly painful poke in the ribs made him look up angrily. What? She pointed at the window. Harry looked around. Hedwig was perched on the narrow window ledge, gazing through the thick glass at him, letter tied to her leg. Harry could not understand it. They had just had breakfast. Why on earth hadn't she delivered the letter then? As usual? Many of his classmates were pointing out Hedwig to each other, too. Oh, I've always loved that owl. She's so beautiful, Harry heard Lavender sigh to Parvati. He glanced around at Professor Binns, who continued to read his notes, serenely unaware that the class's attention was even less focused upon him than usual. Harry slipped quietly off his chair, crouched down, and hurried along the road to the window, where he slid the catch and opened it very slowly. He had expected Hedwig to hold out her legs so that she could remove the letter and fly off to the owlery, but the moment the window was opened wide enough, she hopped inside, hooting dolefully. He closed the window with an anxious glance at Professor Binns. He closed the window with crouched low again, and sped back to his seat with Hedwig on his shoulder. He regained his seat, transferred Hedwig to his lap, and made to remove the letter tied to her leg. It was only then that he realized that Hedwig's feathers were oddly ruffled. Some were bent the wrong way, and she was holding one of her wings at an odd angle. She's hurt, Harry whispered, bending his head low over her. Hermione and Ron leaned in closer. Hermione even put down her quill. Look, there's something wrong with her wing. Hedwig was quivering. When Harry made to touch the wing, she gave a little jump, all her feathers on end as though she were inflating herself, and gazed at him reproachfully. Professor Binns, said Harry loudly, and everyone in the class turned to look at him. I'm not feeling well. Professor Binns raised his eyes from his notes, looking amazed, as always, to find the room in front of him full of people. Not feeling well? He repeated hazily. Not at all well, said Harry firmly, getting to his feet while concealing Hedwig behind his back. So I think I'll need to go to the hospital wing. Yes, said Professor Binns, clearly very much wrong-footed. Yes, hospital wing. Well, off you go then, Perkins. That's not even his name. Once outside the room, Harry returned Hedwig to his shoulder and hurried up the corridor, pausing to think only when he was out of sight of Ben's door. His first choice of somebody to cure Hedwig would have been Hagrid, of course, but as he had no idea where Hagrid was, his only remaining option was to find Professor Grubbly Plank and hope she would help. He peered out of a window at the blustery, overcast grounds. There was no sign of her anywhere near Hagrid's cabin. If she was not teaching, she was probably in the staff room. He set off downstairs, Hedwig hooting feebly as she swayed on his shoulder. 2 stone gargoyles flanked the staff room door, and Harry approached. One of them croaked, "You should be in class, Sonny Jim." "This is urgent," said Harry curtly. "Ooh, urgent, is it?" said the other Goyle in a high-pitched voice. "Well, that puts us in our place, hasn't it?" Harry knocked. He heard footsteps and the door open, and he found himself face to face with Professor McGonagall. "You haven't been given another detention?" she said at once, her square spectacles flashing alarmingly. "No, Professor," said Harry hastily. "Oh, then why are you out of class?" "It's urgent, apparently," said the second gargoyle snidely. "I'm looking for Professor Grubbly Plank," Harry explained. "It's my owl. She's injured." "Injured owl? Did you say?" Professor Grubbly Plank appeared at McGonagall's shoulder, smoking a pipe and holding a copy of the Daily Prophet. "Yes," said Harry, lifting Hedwig carefully off his shoulder. "She turned up after the other post owls, and her wings all funny. Look." Professor Grubbly Plank stuck her pipe firmly between her teeth and took Hedwig from Harry while Professor McGonagall watched. Said Professor Grubbly Plank, her pipe waggling slightly as she talked. "Looks like something's attacked her. Can't think what would have done it, though. Thestrals will sometimes go for birds, of course, but Hagrid's got the Hogwarts Thestrals well trained not to touch owls." Harry neither knew nor cared what Thestrals were. He just wanted to know that Hedwig was going to be all right. Professor McGonagall, however, looked sharply at Harry and said, "Do you know how far this owl's traveled, Potter?" Said Harry. "From London, I think." He met her eyes briefly and knew that she understood London to mean number 12 Grimmauld Place by the way her eyebrows had joined in the middle. Professor Grubbly Plank pulled a monocle out of the inside of her robes and screwed it into her eye to examine Hedwig's wing closely. "I should be able to sort this out if you leave her with me, Potter," she said. "She shouldn't be flying long distances for a few days, in any case." Right, thanks," said Harry, just as the bell rang for break. "No problem," said Professor Grubbly Plank gruffly, turning back into the staff room. Thank you, everyone. That's all for today. Bye. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to read page 359. Bookmark, close. Peace out.